What is up, everybody? This is Chris Cavanna, and you are listening to The Slant. Now, you may be asking yourself, what the heck is this show? I mean, all I saw was some teaser, and it wasn't really that descriptive. It just said a guy who's going to, give you a fan based input on stuff around the NFL, stuff like that. I mean, that's, that's basically what it is. So, basically, my goal is just to provide some kind of analysis slash news service for the NFL that's not done by one of the NFL media bigwigs, basically. Because there's a lot of those, a lot of guys who are just, talking their mouths off and they think they know everything because they played in the league or because they studied it for so many years. And some of them are pretty smart, but there are some of them that just are like, what are you doing? Why are you getting paid to make such stupid predictions? So that's where I come in. So other than that, that's really about it. I mean, it's just a show coming from a fan's point of view. I'm no expert. I'm not, some big time analysis guy, or I'm not some big type of, expert predictor or anything like that. I'm just going to give it to you straight the way I think it should be. And there's a lot of people out there who want someone who's not just, paid to have an opinion, someone who, I mean, maybe I get paid for this someday. That'd be great. But basically, what I'm looking for is just to get my opinion out there and then have some like minded people maybe watch this or listen to the show, really, and maybe enjoy it for that reason. So basically, it's like an amateur talk radio for the NFL. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not exactly an expert on any of this, but I mean, I keep up with the league enough to really know what I'm talking about, and I have a lot of friends that are like, "Oh my God, you should do a show on it because you know so much about it." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." I like shrugged it off for like 2 or 3 years because I was lazy. But at this point, I'm like, you know what? I really don't have anything to lose. So what the hell? Let's get started on this. Let's make something out of this. Let's just have some fun. And that's what I'm here to do. And I hope you guys enjoy it. So, enough introducing myself in the show. I think it's time we get started and just get right down to it. Get right to the biggest things going on in the NFL right now. But before we get into the serious stuff, I'd like to quickly give a recap of sorts over the last year of what happened because I realize some people who may be listening to this will not have been acquainted to football as some of us have been, and some of us may be, some of you guys may be new here. So I want to give a recap of sorts to kind of catch everyone up who's not up to speed already. So the big things you need to know: the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl this last year, and they won it for the first time ever. The organization and their fans were all going through a massive dry spell when it came to championships because the last time they won one was before the NFL had Super Bowls, and actually it was the NFL and the AFL. And those stood for the National Football League and the American Football League. That was before they merged in 1970, which is why they call it the merger. They'll mention that a lot on TV. So for those of you who don't know, now you know that. And that's basically when they started keeping track of things, such as Super Bowls, which counts as championships now. So everything before that seems to not matter, even though I think they should. And certain records, such as sacks and interceptions and how many touchdowns one gets in a year, stuff like that. Now, I understand being new to some of this stuff, but if you don't know what a sack or an interception or a touchdown are, you may want to look this stuff up on Google before listening to this show any further. Trust me, it's like a 5 minute Google search for all things combined, so trust me, it's not bad. Now, of course, if a lot of my fan base ends up being people that are trying to learn about football, or I get enough requests about it, I will definitely be happy to do any kind of crash course on how to watch football, how to understand it. So that way, you don't end up being that guy in the back of the room just kind of sitting in the kitchen all quiet and sad. All right. Anyway, yeah, so the Eagles won the Super Bowl, first one since the merger, blah, 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 all that stuff. But who they beat was even more impressive. The New England Patriots. They beat the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, who they were, funny enough, they were underdogs throughout the whole playoffs, the Eagles were, and they beat every team that came in their way. So they were underdogs against the Falcons, they won that game. They were underdogs against the Vikings, they won that game. And they were underdogs against the Patriots, and they won the Super Bowl. So that was pretty impressive considering Tom Brady is, whether you agree with me or not, I personally think he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Probably, actually, in my opinion, the best. But a lot of people disagree. A lot of people say he's a cheater because of scandals that the Patriots have had in the past. But I personally think he is the greatest of all time. Some people will debate me on that. Some people will probably dislike this video because of that. But hey, that's just my opinion. And I would be damned if I didn't mention Bill Belichick, probably the greatest head coach of all time as well. Who, again, for the same reasons, people may dislike this video, may disagree with me, call me an idiot, all this other stuff because of scandals that the Patriots have had in the past. If you are curious about which one specifically, look up Spygate and Deflategate. Those two are basically the two scandals that are connected to the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and are the only reason that anyone really argues that they aren't the best of all time. Now, that being said, I'm not a Patriots fan, but I respect them. But at the same time, I do have a favorite team, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, because then that would take away from trying to be unbiased about things. Now, there's going to be teams I don't like, and there's going to be times I'm going to have to really suck it up and give positive feedback on them. Or, there's going to be times there's teams I like that I'm going to have to be critical with. But unlike many biased NFL media big heads, I can do that. I can be unbiased. And I can do that for you guys because that is something that really the NFL in general needs. An outsider who could tell things like they are and try not to be biased. I can't say I'll be perfect with it, but I can definitely try. Now, at any rate, I'm getting sidetracked here, so I'm going to just keep going. Now, another reason actually, that the Eagles' Super Bowl win was so impressive is that their starting quarterback, who probably would have been MVP that year, most valuable player, for those who don't know, Carson Wentz, he was a second-year quarterback, drafted number 2 overall in the NFL draft, and he was considered just killing it. I mean, he was considered like top-of-the-line quarterback that year, and he got injured around, I think it was week 14, week 14 against the Los Angeles Rams, and Nick Foles, the backup, had to come in, and he was with Philadelphia before. He was considered to be the future of Philadelphia a few years before, until he got traded to St. Louis, and then things got hairy, and then St. Louis became Los Angeles, and he got cut. Then he became a backup in Kansas City to Alex Smith, who was also a good quarterback. I don't care what any of you say, he's good. And then he came back to Philly as a backup to Carson Wentz, and he got his chance, and he actually ended up being Super Bowl MVP. So, there you go. It's crazy how things work. So moving on after the Super Bowl and the big upset and the confetti falling down and everything, and Eagles finally being able to say they're world champs and being really obnoxious about it. Oh, shit! We finally moved on to a very mixed emotions type of time. It's called the off season, which can be great or it can be really, 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 really boring. Now, for those of you who don't know, the offseason contains 3 important components. There's free agency, where basically players have fulfilled their contract that they're currently signed to, which means it's time for them to either sign another one with the same team or go to a different team. And of course, not every team can re-sign their player because of either money issues, because they don't have enough money to sign them, because teams get a certain amount of money called a cap, or because they didn't feel that player was right for them anymore and that they decided it was time to move on. And they can either do that by having the contract expire, or before the contract expires, you can possibly trade a player for a certain type of compensation, whether that's another type of player or a draft pick, which leads me into my next point, the NFL draft, which is the second big part of the offseason, where basically you have the right to take a player from college who is eligible to enter the NFL draft, and you can have them signed on to your team. And every team gets a first-round pick. There's 7 rounds, and they each get a first-round pick. And sometimes teams will trade away those first-round picks to get a certain player from a different team. And sometimes it'll be first rounders, and a lot of times you'll see fourth or fifth rounders. And it may not seem like much, but sometimes the best players you can find are in the fourth, fifth, or even seventh rounds once in a while. So really, it just depends. And then last but not least, there is the preseason, which is basically a 4-week tease of the actual season where NFL players will all start to play again. It won't count, of course, because, preseason doesn't count. But it's basically a chance for all the players to get warmed up and for new players to get used to the new system they're in. Because there's all kinds of coordinators who call certain plays and they have to learn all the language because there's so much that goes into it. And you have to be, connected with your new teammates. You have to have a chemistry with them. So that takes time. That takes playing time. And basically all that comes together, and players also get used to getting hit again because they haven't been hit for a while. It's been all practice for the most part in pads and not really much full contact because you don't want to hurt a teammate and hurt your team's chances of going anywhere that season. But basically, that is the first chance for players to get acclimated to things again, or for new players to get acclimated to the NFL in general. And usually I say it's a tease because things just get so boring because it's mostly backups playing. There's only one game. It's usually the third preseason game out of the four where the starters, or the first team, the guys who you'll see every week, play for one half of a game, basically. And another reason I call that a tease is because it's the first time you're seeing football in 6 months. And if you're addicted like I am, you're like, oh my God, finally, the games are back. Oh God, it feels so good. And then, the starters play for like 5 minutes and you're like, that's it? Man, I wanted more. And two more important things to know about the preseason is also a time for coaches to determine who they're going to cut off a team, because at the start of preseason, you have 90 players. By the end of it, you got to have 53. So by this last Saturday, we had to have 53 for every team. And so there were a lot of cuts being made and some trades even being made, which I will get into later because there was one in particular that was completely nuts. But anywho, there's also the importance of, injuries that happen in the preseason. So some guys that were going to be starters this year have gone out either in practice or in a game, in the preseason game through contact. So some of them have sustained injuries that are out for a few weeks, out for most of the season, out for the entire year. So there's a lot of that. And with that comes late signings. So there's going to be some players that just got cut off another team that might get signed right away and be expected to start either this coming week or, in the next few weeks. And there's going to be some players who were, previously injured and just no one wanted to take a chance on them. And someone might have to because, later in the season, someone important might get hurt and they're going to need a replacement. So basically, there's a lot of cuts going on. It's a big business. It's always going on. But it does die down during the season because, people are playing. We got more important things to worry about unless someone gets injured or something. So it is important to know, and I think it's important all of you know this that don't know it already. The NFL, while it's also a great, awesome game to watch, it's a business. It's a football business. I mean, it's about signing the right players, keeping your money, not wasting your money on, some random player that could or couldn't be good. It's about saving money and getting the best result for the best price. So enough yammerings about all of that stuff. I feel like I've gotten on a bit of a tangent here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there with all the recap and learning lessons and all that stuff. So now, finally, starting tonight, football is back. And it's going to be the season opener with the Philadelphia Eagles, the world champs, playing at home against the Atlanta Falcons, the guys who they beat in the divisional round. And that was by far, by far their closest game, I'd say, in the playoffs. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Falcons. That was the Eagles' closest game that they could have lost because it was literally by a goal line stand that they won that game. And funny enough, that was the statistic they were saying in that game was that the Eagles' defense had not given up a touchdown within the final 2 minutes in that whole season. It was interesting to know that. I thought that was really interesting, and they lived up to that all season. Now, as great as that game's going to be and how great it's going to be to talk about it and talk about all the other games going on this weekend, I gotta first talk about some big news that's happened over the last week, nonetheless. I mean, a lot happened this week that usually does not happen this late in the off season. So first, some serious breaking news that broke last Saturday on September 1st. Khalil Mack, all-pro defensive end slash outside linebacker for the Oakland Raiders, and the best draft pick they've had in the last 20 years, I'd say, was traded to the Chicago Bears. And he was traded for 2 first-round picks. So 2019 and 2020, the Bears will not have a first-rounder unless they trade some other great player for one. And I don't see that really happening. But you never know. I mean, 2 years is a long time. You never know what could happen between now and then. Anything could happen. I mean, I had no idea Khalil Mack would not be a Raider this year at the end of this previous season. I had no thought of that not happening. I mean, it's huge. It's outrageous. It's crazy. What's even crazier is that the Raiders really weren't even planning on trading Khalil Mack, or that's what their general manager said on Sunday. Is that they really weren't planning on trading him. They didn't really want. I mean, they didn't want to because he's a generational type of player, obviously. But they felt like their hands were tied. He really hadn't been in contact with them for a few months. Him and his agent and the Raiders were not talking. It just seemed like a big stalemate, and there really wasn't any end in sight. So they figured, might as well make this move because we really don't have any other options. And it seems like John Gruden wasn't a big fan of this holdout, so obviously he feels like no love lost in this situation, even though I'm sure Raiders fans would strongly disagree with that. So for him to go be a Chicago Bear now, right before the season starts, nonetheless, and to get a extra 6 years on his contract. So basically, they traded. He had 1 year left. Then they added a 6-year extension worth $141 million. You heard that right. $141 million. That is record breaking for a defensive player. And it's the most any team's ever given up, trading wise, like draft pick wise, for a defensive player. 2 first rounders. That's nuts. I mean, that's crazy. And, I mean, he deserves it, though. I mean, he's an unbelievable player. I mean, personally, I think between him, Von Miller, and J.J. Watt, who, yes, he is still probably, honestly, if Watt is in his prime, he's still the best in the league. But he's been injured lately, so that's why people haven't been talking about it as much. But I think he might have a bounce back here. But anyway, Khalil Mack, arguably the best pass rusher in this league. So I think the compensation is worth it, obviously, to get a player like that on a Bears defense that, in my opinion, is underratedly good. I mean, they are underrated, and I think they can be just a nightmare this year now that they got Khalil Mack. And honestly, I thought the Bears weren't going to even come in third place in their division. Now I'm thinking they it's tough to say they'll win the division just because I don't know how their offense is going to do yet. But if that defense has anything to say about it, man, they're going to be good. What's hilarious is a day before that, another great defensive player, arguably on the same level as Khalil Mack and all those other guys, just got a record extension. It was a record until Khalil Mack got his. So that's pretty funny if you ask me. But nonetheless, that player was Aaron Donald, defensive tackle slash defensive end for the Rams. And he got paid a 6-year contract of $135 million, which is also totally insane, but at the same time, he totally deserves it. He is a complete game wrecker. Then there was extensions with NFL quarterbacks, who are also very, very valuable in this league. Actually, the most valuable in this league, I'd say. So starting with Aaron Rodgers, who got a ton of money. He's making like $33.5 million a year now with his new extension. So Green Bay made the right choice on that. Overall, it's $134 million, which includes guarantees and bonuses and things like that, which honestly, as a fan, I really don't know why anyone would care. Obviously, all the bigwig media people in the NFL care about it because, they like to dissect all that stuff. But really, any fan is just going to hear the big number and be like, oh, he got paid, man, because we're not going to keep track and be like 5 years from now, like, hey, did he get that extra $2 million? I need to know that. It's very important. So, in short, you will never hear me really go into too much detail about the contract because, like I said, not really that many people care. So, I'll just pretty much give you the big numbers and all the stuff that matters. That's about it. So, I wouldn't worry too much about anything else. Now, who also got paid? Matt Ryan, the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, also got paid. The dude got paid a lot of money, 150 million to be exact. Of course, the big difference is, he made more money than Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, but he's making less per year because this is a 5-year contract for Matt Ryan. For Aaron Rodgers, it's a 4-year contract. So really, in the end, Aaron Rodgers makes, you know, the same if not more money per year. I mean, sure, Matt Ryan gets paid more in the end, but I mean, Rodgers, I don't think he cares. He's looking for shorter contract anyway because he's getting up there. So not that he's ancient. He could probably play after this contract too. But it's just that's just how the team worked it, and that's really all that matters. Then there was also Odell Beckham Jr., one of the most polarizing and yet talented wide receivers in the NFL, and he got paid $95 million in 5 years. So if you ask me, that's also pretty darn high considering, guys like Antonio Brown are making less than him. But he is a great player, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of him or his antics, sometimes he can be a bit childish and act like a pouty 10-year-old, or sometimes act like a kid with, way too much sugar in his system. He obviously convinced the Giants that he was worth the money. So, congrats to him on that. But now the question is, will he stop acting like a 10-year-old on a sugar high every game? Will he stop pouting and crying when they lose games? Will he even stay healthy this year? These are all important questions to ask, and that is why I asked them. Now, as I mentioned before, there were also some injuries that happened either in practice or in preseason games. To start, Chargers tight end Hunter Henry tore his ACL in practice. This was like a couple months ago. This is not exactly news anymore, but they actually did re-sign Antonio Gates to a 1-year deal just this past Sunday. So that is definitely news. And then Jerick McKinnon last Saturday tore his ACL in practice, and he had just come back too from a muscle strain in his calf. So that's pretty unfortunate timing. Not to mention it was like, one of the last practices before he finally got to hit the field. So that's also even worse timing. Then there was Marquise Lee, the wide receiver, the number one wide receiver, in fact, of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He tore his ACL in the third preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons. So just some more, bad luck, but at the same time, they've got a young receiving core that can hopefully make up for it. So hopefully that's not too much of an issue for them. Then there were some cuts as well. Former first rounders being cut, such as Paxton Lynch, the 2016 first round draft pick of the Denver Broncos, and Rashad Perriman, the number one draft pick of the, not number one overall, but number one, as in their first pick of the 2015 draft. He was supposed to be a big time wide receiver for them, and he ended up just being a complete bust. So rip the Ravens on that one. And that just goes to show you, folks, first rounders don't always mean instant success. Sometimes they mean a big old bust and just disappointment and false hype. The Patriots cut running back Mike Gillislee. The Vikings cut wide receiver Kendall Wright, defensive end Brian Robeson, and Terrence Newman, 15 years in the league as an NFL cornerback, finally retired on Saturday, the 1st of September. But enough of all this talk of cuts and retirements and who's signed where and all that stuff. That's all done now. Now it's the regular season. This is where things start to get really, really interesting. Because now we don't have to think of things such as, Sam Darnold, the number 3 overall pick in the draft, is, he's with the Jets. I wonder how he would eventually play when he finally gets a chance to start. Or Khalil Mack, how's he going to do? That he just got traded to the Bears. How will he play? It's a very interesting thing that we won't know yet. But that is no longer the case because now we will know how they do. Finally. God. After 7 frickin' months of waiting, they all better be frickin' amazing. Oh, crap. I was recording that. Well, okay. So, last thing before I head out of here and watch the game, let's have some predictions. And what better game to start with than Philly and Atlanta? I mean, that's the opener. Obviously, I'm going to have to do that one first. When I was first writing up the script for this, I had a question of who would be starting, Carson Wentz or Nick Foles, just like everyone else has been asking in the offseason. But of course, we figured out the answer would be Nick Foles when they announced it. Sometime last week, I can't remember exactly. But we do know that Foles beat the Falcons last time. Granted, there were some throws he really shouldn't have made, and he was really lucky weren't picked off. The way he played in that game made me think that the Eagles were probably not even going to go to the Super Bowl. They were going to probably lose to Minnesota. And instead, they actually won the whole thing, but that's because Nick Foles started tearing it up the next two games. Now, if Foles plays like he did against Minnesota or New England, yeah, they're easily going to win this game. But if he plays like he did against Atlanta or, well, even how he played this preseason, I mean, the way he played against Cleveland especially, just not it was not good. So, and you know what, even against Atlanta, at least he didn't throw an interception or anything. I mean, he should have a couple times, but in the end he didn't. So, honestly, as long as he doesn't play like he did against Cleveland, I think they'll be fine. But again, that's a big if. I mean, is that the real Nick Foles, or is what we saw in the playoffs the real Nick Foles? I mean, I think personally, the Nick Foles that is the real Nick Foles is the one that showed up in the playoffs. Because I remember him being good before. He just needs a good coordinator around him, which most quarterbacks need. Some of them, obviously, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, guys like that, don't need a super good coordinator or anything, but it does help. Of course, with Nate Sudfeld not playing a week ago, we should have seen this coming that Foles would be starting. Even though Doug Pearson wanted to say, "Oh yeah, no, that's nothing. I know Nate, and I know that he's already well prepared." Blah blah blah. No, we knew that was a sign. We knew that Foles was gonna be the guy on Thursday night. You could just kind of tell. Of course, Wentz won't be the only one that they're without in Week 1. They will also not have Nigel Bradham. He's suspended for Week 1 due to a July 2016 incident. And Alshon Jeffrey, will also not be able to play because he's hurt and he really won't be ready till Week 3, is what they're saying. So, but having Sproles, Hicks, and Peters back will help. So having a good third down back, having your middle linebacker back, and having your all-pro left tackle back will definitely that'll make a big difference. And of course, that Philly D is still pretty nasty, so I don't think they're going to have too many issues on that side of the ball. And that could easily win them the game. But on the other side, the Falcons were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and they've still been pretty good ever since. They've been in the playoffs last year and 2016, obviously. And they look like they could be in again this year, so we shall see. Of course, they got to go up against that stacked Philly defense, which I just mentioned. And they got to get a run game going this time because the last time they met, Freeman had 7 yards on 10 carries. So he's definitely got to have a better day if they're going to win. But they can do it. And their defense is pretty good too. So there's always a possibility that they could win. But at the end of the day, I do think Philly's going to come out on top. I think their defense is just too good to, be taken down at home. And I think Atlanta's offense is good, but it's the first game of the season. And usually when it comes to the beginning of the season, usually the defense has an upper hand because the offense is still trying to figure things out. They're still trying to get things on the same page with every player, and there's just a lot of miscommunication at times. So I'm picking Philly to win at home. I'm picking the champs. Yep, I'm picking the champs. Just because they're at home. That's a big reason. If it was in Atlanta, it'd be a totally different story, I think. But they're at home. Plus, they'll be coming off the Super Bowl high. I mean, that doesn't always work, but I think this time they're going to be pumped because they're ready to prove that they can repeat. Whether they actually can or not, I really don't know. I personally don't think so, just because it's so hard to do, but you never know. Personally, I think Philly will be a repeat of the 2016 Super Bowl champion Broncos, or when they won the Super Bowl in February of 16. I think that 16 season they're gonna start off really good, like go 3-0 or 4-0, something like that, and then they're gonna kind of drop off a little bit and kind of have that championship thing hang over their heads and kind of digress over the season and eventually end up at 7-9. Now, Eagles fans will probably want to kill me because that is an outrageous prediction. How dare you? My Eagles are the best that have ever been. Well, you know what? I mean, I'm not buying it. I mean, they got some serious injuries to overcome. And if Wentz stays healthy, oh, for sure they got a chance. But will he even repeat what he did last year? I mean, sure he could, but at the same time, that could have been a one-year thing. I mean, look at Cam Newton in 2015. He had a great season, and then many thought he was going to, either repeat it or even improve upon it. And instead, he kind of just regressed. So we shall see. FYI, I know my diction, especially with my S's, isn't the best, but I will be working on that in the future, so just bear with me. I mean, it's the first episode. Nothing's good on the first episode. Anywho, next game, Bills at Ravens. So, basically, the Bills, how do I put this delicately? Their offensive line is horrible. I mean, did you see what happened to Josh Allen in that third preseason game against the Bengals? I mean, holy crap. I mean, he was like getting killed out there. I mean, he couldn't even think about throwing the ball because a defender was in his face right as he snapped it. It was horrible. And speaking of Josh Allen, I was actually wondering who was going to be the starting quarterback. But at one point, I thought it'd be McCarron. Then he gets traded to the Raiders, so that's out the window. So with it looking like Nathan Peterman's going to start, I give them a negative .750, 500, .051, .058, 57, .412, 38, 51, 4141. Yeah, so basically I don't see them winning. That Baltimore defense is just way too tough for that offensive line. And to be honest, Joe Flacco may not be the best quarterback in the world, but he's not the worst quarterback in the world. He can probably win that game against the Buffalo defense. I mean, all he needs is probably 20-ish points to win. I think he can manage that. And I'm sure many of you are screaming for Lamar Jackson to start, but if you looked at him in the preseason, you know he's not ready. I mean, he's getting better. He's learning, but he's still got a long way to go. He's very inconsistent right now, and I just don't think he's ready. Although, Baltimore did go undefeated in the preseason again. And when that happened to them last year and the year before, they missed the playoffs. Actually, all four teams that went 4-0 in the preseason last year missed the playoffs. And what's funny is they actually went 5-0 because of the Hall of Fame game. So, if you guys believe in curses like that, like I do, maybe Buffalo does win. No, but seriously, Baltimore wins, hands down. They're at home. Buffalo's not looking that good. So, yeah, Baltimore. Next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars heading to New York to face the Giants, which is a matchup I'm really excited about, to be honest with you guys. You would think the reason I'd be excited about this game is because of OBJ taking on Jalen Ramsey and their battle to the death over who's better, or the battle between Saquon Barkley and Fournette to see who's the better young running back. But no. I'm excited to see two average quarterbacks in Blake Bortles and Eli Manning go head-to-head. It's going to be great. No, but seriously, I am excited about OBJ versus Jalen Ramsey. That is a matchup I've been waiting for since I figured out they're going to play week 1. Heck, even before when I just realized, oh snap, they're going to play each other this year. That's awesome. So I'm excited for that. Of course, I'm also waiting for Beckham versus Patrick Peterson. Still have yet to have that because either Beckham is hurt or Peterson's hurt, but you get my point. Anyways, it's going to be a great matchup, and I'm really excited. Probably the best wide receiver corner matchup of the weekend, in my opinion. And it will be interesting to see if the Giants' defense is trash like it was last year, or if it's great like it was the year before that when they went to the playoffs, because they will have a test in Blake Bortles and Leonard Fournette. Fournette especially, he will actually be a real test. I mean, don't get me wrong, Bortles isn't like super trash or anything. He's not the worst quarterback I've ever seen. In fact, he's actually had a couple games. Like that game in Pittsburgh was pure brilliance. But yeah, he's not exactly a game breaker or anything. So if they struggle against him, it's going to be a bad year, I think, for the Giants. But if that Giants defense is good again this year, I think that's the one hurdle they could get over finally that'll get them into the playoffs. Because that's the one thing that really right now is the biggest concern for them. Eli will definitely be better than he was last year. I have no doubt about that because, last year was a complete tragedy. But seriously, I think the defense is the big difference maker this year for the Giants between winning the division and possibly a playoff game or two, or hell, knowing them winning the Super Bowl as a wild card team, and, well, not even getting close to making the playoffs. However, I'm leaning towards taking Jacksonville in this game, and it's only because that defense and the confidence in themselves. No doubt the Giants defense could step up in that game and be fantastic. But that Jacksonville defense is just way too good right now. And they're way too confident in themselves, too. Not cocky, confident. Big difference. I think they're going to win for that reason because they know they can take on anybody. I mean, hell, they nearly beat the Patriots in the championship game. And really, that was just because they were playing it so safe with Blake Bortles on offense that the Jags lost. So, honestly, I think Jags start off 1-0. I think they win this game. And it's going to be close, I have a feeling. But I think the big difference maker as well as the defense being confident is Blake Bortles. Honestly, if he can just put up, I'd say anywhere from 20 to 24 points in that game against the Giants defense, I think they'll win because anything less than that, I think the Jaguars can hold the Giants offense to, like 21 points or 19 points or whatever. Basically, if Blake puts up 20-ish points, I think they win. Okay, next game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at New Orleans Saints. Well, gonna be honest with you guys, I really don't have much to say about this one because Jameis Winston is suspended 3 games. The Saints are the NFC South champs of last year, and honestly, if it weren't for that miracle play in Minnesota, they'd probably be playing the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I don't think they would have beat the Patriots. They could have. I really don't know, to be honest. But either way, yeah, they're probably going to crush the Buccaneers unless Fitzpatrick has the game of his life, basically. And even then, they may still lose by like a field goal. So, honestly, I see a blowout for New Orleans. Next up, the Houston Texans at the New England Patriots. Now this, in my opinion, should have been the Sunday night game in Week 1 instead of the Bears at the Packers. Like, what were they thinking on that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But hey, I'm not the schedule maker. Should be. But anyway, I think that the Texans are going to give the Patriots a run for their money. But in the end, Tom Brady will have another game-winning drive and win by a touchdown or a field goal or whatever, and the Texans will come up short again. But Deshaun Watson will shred that New England defense like he did last time, and that Texans defense will definitely give Tom Brady fits throughout the game. So it'll be a good game, but unfortunately for the Texans, it's just too tough. In Foxborough, against Brady, it's just too tough in my eyes. Maybe J.J. Watt will get his first sack against Tom Brady, though. I'd like to see that finally happen because Belichick has game planned around him for so long. And it's just, it's so annoying to see such a great player like him never, ever sack Tom Brady when so many other players have been able to. It's just crazy. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Now, this should also be a great game. Another game that I think deserves primetime attention, but it won't. Jimmy Garoppolo, who had a red-hot 5 games when he got traded to San Fran last year, he just completely turned that team around. I mean, they just transformed with him. He was able to change the whole offense and change the whole vibe around the building in San Francisco. So, honestly, I think it's going to be a close game. And of course, Kirk Cousins getting that monster mega deal that the Vikings gave him, which is honestly a little surprising because in my opinion, Kirk Cousins is better than Case Keenum, but not by very much. They're both really good quarterbacks in my eyes. Not like, Tom Brady good or Aaron Rodgers good, but they're both really good. They're both franchise-worthy quarterbacks in my eyes. And to see them pay so much more for him instead of keeping Keenum, who was already used to the system and had chemistry with all the receivers and all that stuff, and just was really a hero over there because of the Minneapolis Miracle, or as I like to call it, the Skull Mary. But hey, no one likes that name for some reason. But yeah, why would you pay so much more for a guy you don't know is going to do well or not? I mean, it is Kirk Cousins, and he didn't tear it up in Washington, even though Washington was a very injury-riddled team. He still made them at least come close to getting in the playoffs every year. But case in point, thank you, you're all too kind. I don't know why they paid so much more for a guy they're not going to be sure about. I mean, obviously he's looking pretty good in the preseason and everything, but at the same time, it's a lot more money you could have spent elsewhere. I mean, Keenum definitely would have taken less money. I know for a fact he would have taken less than what Cousins got, just because he doesn't have as much market demand. But that's a totally different story. Basically, Vikings defense is still completely intact. In fact, it's gotten even better because they got Sheldon Richardson now. And actually, they even got the safety George Iloka from Cincinnati. And if Andrew Sendejo slips up at all, he'll be in there. And I think that could possibly be an improvement. I mean, they're both starting caliber safeties. It's just you never know. One gets hurt, the other plays better, the other one stays, and the first guy goes. So either way, it looks like they've only improved between Cousins, Richardson, Iloka. I don't think they've gotten any worse, and it seems like they're well on their way to winning this game and the NFC North. Of course, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers will have something to say about that, but that's for a different time. Next up, Tennessee Titans at Miami Dolphins. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most underrated matchups of Week 1 because you got Mariota, you got Derrick Henry, you got Deion Lewis, you got an up-and-coming Corey Davis, you got Delaney Walker, and you got a great offensive line. I mean, that is one of the best. Even without Jack Conklin, they're still going to be pretty good. And he'll be back eventually, so they'll get even better. But that is a great offense. And then you got an improved defense with Logan Ryan, Brian Arakpo, Malcolm Butler now, Adoree Jackson, and, of course, Jarrell Casey. How can you forget about him? But overall, you got a better team in the Titans with a new head coach in Mike Vrabel, who I think is going to be great, and he's going to boost that defense. And that defense was already pretty solid, but now it could turn into a legitimate threat for other teams. Plus, it keeps Marcus Mariota on the field longer, which is always a plus when you're trying to win a game. And then you look at the other team in Miami, and you have Ryan Tannehill finally back. And personally, I think if it weren't for the ACL, Ryan Tannehill would have won that game in Pittsburgh in 2016, and they would have gone to the divisional round and lost to New England most likely. But anyways, Ryan Tannehill will be back. Offense will be better. And I think Tannehill will go back to being really, really good like he was in 16. And Kenyon Drake will finally get a full year to start. And I think he'll be really good as long as the offensive line stays healthy, which will be a big if because they were definitely not consistently healthy in the last couple years. Plus now you've got Danny Amendola on the offense, along with Devontae Parker and Kenny Stills. Of course, losing Jarvis Landry, I don't think was a good thing for the Dolphins. I don't know why they were so ready to get rid of him. But, hey, that's their loss. Whatever. The defense led by Kiko Alonso, Xavier Howard, and Robert Quinn now, along with Cameron Wake, should be better. But I don't know. That's still not a super good defense in my eyes. It's not exactly going to give you confidence. But it should be a good game overall. I do think the Titans will win just because they outrank the Dolphins in terms of offense and defense. But it will be a good game. This next game features another quarterback who hasn't played since 2016 because of injury. And that would be Andrew Luck. And it will be the Cincinnati Bengals going to Indianapolis to face Andrew Luck's Colts. I, for one, cannot wait to see Andrew Luck play again because, honestly, he's a top 5 quarterback if he's healthy, in my opinion. He's phenomenal. I've seen him bring his team back from the brink of death multiple times. And have many, many unbelievable comebacks. So, honestly, having Luck back with the new coach in Frank Reich, I think will be a great thing because it will boost their offense, and I think their defense will get a little bit better as well. Just a new coaching staff sometimes it's just the best thing for a team. And in this case, I certainly think that's going to help the Colts. Now, of course, Cincinnati does look a lot better. John Ross has certainly started to show why he should have been picked ninth overall. Now, does that mean they're going to win this game? Probably not. But between him, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, Tyler Eifert, Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard, and of course Andy Dalton, the quarterback, I think they're going to put up a good fight. And I think they're going to be much better this year because Andy Dalton's starting to look like Andy Dalton of 2015, which was probably the best we've ever seen of Andy Dalton. So, and the big reason for that is because now he's got a better line. They picked Billy Price in the first round of the draft, and they got Cordy Glenn in a trade with Buffalo. And it seems like their line is starting to mesh. It's starting to get better now. And their defense, I don't know if it was just the Bills' offensive line in that third preseason game or what, but that defense looked ferocious. They just looked ready to kill somebody. And no, I was not referring to Vontez Burfict there, but I think this is going to be another close game, and I think just because the Colts are at home, they're going to squeeze one out, probably by 3, I'd say. So Frank Reich will get his first win as a head coach, but don't be discouraged, Bengals fans, because I think you guys are going to have a great season ahead of you. Next up, Pittsburgh Steelers at Cleveland Browns. Now, don't get me wrong. Cleveland is a hell of a lot better than they were last year. I can just tell already. They made a lot of improvements, and they seem like a totally different team than last year. And, of course, last year I thought, they'll definitely get more than one win. Nope, they didn't even get one, so that was pretty bad. But this year, for sure, I'd say at least 5 or 6 wins. This is a much better team. You can see how much better they are than last year. Now, with that being said, Steelers win this game. Why? Because they're the freaking Steelers. They go to the AFC Championship just about every year, or at least the divisional round. And honestly, between Brown, Bell, who's been sitting out all offseason, but still, it's Bell, and Big Ben, the triple Bs, and a somewhat good Steelers defense. Sure, they'd be better with Shazier than without, but if it's and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a very Merry Christmas. So, case in point, I've said that 3 times now, they are still a great team, and as good as Cleveland is, this is just not one of those games they're going to win. Tyrod Taylor is definitely a starter in this league. I think he was treated unfairly in Buffalo. I don't know why they were so ready to get rid of him. But between their offensive line situation and just their lack of wins in the last year, I can't see them pulling this out. It's too tough. They'll win more games, but this is not going to be one of them. And now we move on to the beginning of the Patrick Mahomes era as the Kansas City Chiefs go to visit the Los Angeles Chargers. With Alex Smith officially out the door and Patrick Mahomes taking over, it seems like Kansas City seems to know what they're doing now with the quarterback position. Not that Alex Smith wasn't doing a great job, and in my opinion, I think he was still doing a really good job over there. But I can see why they switched to Mahomes. They figured he was ready. He was obviously ahead of schedule, and no sense in waiting any longer. Might as well get Alex Smith out of there, trade him, get some value for him while he's still fairly young, and had a great year. That in turn definitely adds more trade value to a player. So it made sense why they did it. Personally, I liked Alex Smith in Kansas City. I thought he was a great fit. And Andy Reid even said himself, if Alex was just younger, he would have kept him for much longer, and he wouldn't have even probably drafted Mahomes. But his age was an issue, and unfortunately, that's what broke them up. Otherwise, he would have probably had a very long and successful career with Andy Reid. But enough gushing over the wouldas and couldas. It's Patrick Mahomes' time, and it's go time. Soon, everyone in Kansas City will be having a bro chant going, "What's up, Mahomes?" every time he scores a touchdown. Soon, his brand will take over all of Kansas City, and then all of the NFL, and then all of the world. No, but seriously, this kid's young, he's got a hell of an arm, and he looks like he can play, so we shall see what happens. But, considering it's in LA against a great Chargers team, who, in my opinion, if it weren't for a bad kicker last year, they would have definitely been in the playoffs, most likely would have won the AFC West, and possibly could have contended for the Super Bowl last year. I think it's going to be pretty hard for them to get a road win here. It's too steep of a climb. Believe me, I'm hoping for a competitive game, but between that stacked Chargers defense with Ingram, Boza, Hayward, now they got Derwin James, they got all kinds of talent on defense. And then you got Phillip Rivers at quarterback, you got Melvin Gordon, you got Keenan Allen, Tyrell Williams, Travis Benjamin, Mike Williams eventually is going to show up at some point. So it's going to be tough. Oh, and they got Antonio Gates back because, Hunter Henry's out, so they had to have somebody. It's about time they signed him. I don't know why it took them so long. But as I was saying, with all that going on with the Chargers, I just don't see how the Chiefs can win. Having Eric Berry back does help, for sure. It will make it a closer game because of that. But unless the Chargers, just fall straight on their face, which actually, they are known to do that every once in a while. Or a lot, really. So, they could win. Chiefs easily could win if the Chargers don't play up to their true potential. But if they play up to their true potential, Chargers will win this game. I can promise you that. And now we have a Super Bowl rematch. Super Bowl 48. Broncos, Seahawks. Well, kinda. It's Case Keenum's Broncos, but you get the idea. And, well, the Legion of Boom is really not Legion of Boom anymore. It's kind of like the Legion of meh. But either way, it's going to be a good game. Case Keenum, fun fact, is 2-0 against the Seahawks. And both victories he's had were by 6 points. So I have a feeling it's going to be a repeat of those two games. He's going to have a good game, maybe not an amazing game, but a good game, good enough game to win. And I predict a 16-10 final outcome in the Broncos' favor. 16-10 win for the Broncos. I can visualize it. For some reason, that is just what I see. I don't know why, ladies and gentlemen, but that's just what I see. I see it. I think it's going to happen. I could easily be wrong, but we shall see. And one could argue that Seattle could win because, their offensive line got a little bit better, and maybe the Legion of Boom's still not there, but they're still pretty good. Their linebackers are still good. Their front four seems to be pretty good. And their secondary still can hold up pretty well. Plus, Russell Wilson is just dangerous, as many on NFL Network especially have called him. But I think that Broncos defense with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, I think those two are just going to rush Wilson to death. I think he's just going to run for his life the whole game. And I think Keenum will be able to hold his own, probably not turn the ball over, and just be able to give him a good solid victory. And it'll be a final stand. It'll be 16-10 with like a minute left. Russell Wilson had the ball, and Von Miller will probably strip sack him and win the game. But if there's anything I know about the NFL, it's that NFL stands for not for long, and that anything can happen on any given Sunday. So, like I said before, we shall see. Up next. It's the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte, North Carolina. Oh God, damn it, it's still recording. Oh, Jesus. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of the NFL on Fox theme, and, well, I'm also a big fan of this matchup. But before I get into that, let me just say something about Joe Buck. I used to hate Joe Buck. I used to think he was the most boring commentator in the world. But in the last couple years, I got to give him credit. He has gotten a lot more energetic, lively, and just more exciting. He just sounds more exciting now than he used to. I got to give him credit for that. That's good on him. It's good that he's finally improving a little bit because, to be honest, in years past, he was pretty damn boring. He had just no emotion, in my opinion, and I think that's really changed. I enjoy listening to him now, to be honest. But without further ado, let's look into this matchup. Now, Dallas has a little bit more of an uphill battle than in years past because they don't have Dez Bryant. Terrence Williams is just not who he used to be. Cole Beasley isn't really who he used to be. And now they got Allen Hurns and Tavon Austin for wide receivers. And that's not exactly the most inspiring group in the world. Of course, they got that monster offensive line and Zeke Elliott running the ball. So they're going to be okay in that department. And that's not the part I'm worried about. It's just the passing game. If they get in the second or third and long situations, they're going to be in some deep doo-doo. They're going to have some serious trouble getting first downs against that Panthers defense, because I'm not sure if you guys saw the third preseason game or heard anything anyone said about the third preseason game for the Panthers, but Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp were talking about it before they went on a rant for about 3 minutes about Dallas, because of course every conversation has to have Dallas in it. And it wasn't even related to the game. It was just related to like some stupid argument about how Sean Lee is possibly better than Luke Kuechly. And, you know, Skip Bayless being his usual biased Cowboys fan self. I mean, I get it. It's his team, but, I mean, really? Come on now. We're talking about Luke Kuechly. But it was interesting to hear them say that they were thinking Carolina's going to be real good. And Skip Bayless was even saying they think that the Panthers will probably win week 1 and that he's scared of them. And honestly, I think he's right. I think he should be scared, because this is honestly just a really good-looking team. I mean, they held Tom Brady in the preseason. I mean, it is preseason, but in the preseason, still pretty impressive. They held him to 3 points. 3 in the first half. Granted, one of them should have been another field goal, so it really should have been 6. But 3 points. No touchdowns. With Gronk and Edelman and Hogan and James White and Jeremy Hill. I mean that's pretty good. And I was actually reading somewhere that the Panthers were the most prolific offense in the preseason. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive. So between Cam, McCaffrey, Olsen, Funches, Torrey Smith, Jarius Wright, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, I mean, that's a pretty good offense. And really the only weaknesses I see right now are the secondary and the offensive line for the Panthers. That's about it. And even then, that could turn out to be pretty good. So, honestly, Dallas is going to have to try and take advantage of that, those two weaknesses. But most likely, it seems like Carolina's going to win. Dallas does have a good defense, so they have a chance. But I think at home, Carolina's going to win it. Up next, we have Alex Smith and the Redskins taking on Sam Bradford and the Cardinals. And really, I really don't know what to think of this game. It's a pretty odd one, to be honest with you. But I think Cardinals at home, David Johnson's back. Sam Bradford, he's healthy, so he'll probably play pretty well. So I give them the edge in that game just because they're at home, and Chandler Jones will probably get a sack or two. And, you know, I don't know. This is just one of those games that's just you got a feeling. You just got to go with it. Of course, it'll be cool to see AP, now the former Cardinal, come back to Arizona and play. And if they can get the run game going, they can win that game. But it seems to me like Arizona's got this one. Not by much, probably, but I think they got it. Next up, the ultimate rivalry, Bears-Packers. And I'll tell you, these two teams have played the most out of any two teams in the NFL. They played each other the most, and it's pretty interesting to see how one-sided it's been. But Mitch Trubisky and Khalil Mack can change that, if Khalil Mack even plays. But if he plays, Aaron Rodgers better start running, because he's going to wreck that line he's got in front of him. It's nasty. But I picked the Packers to win, I'd say by 3, just because I don't really know where the Bears' offense is going just yet. That Bears defense will be pretty nasty, though. All right, moving on to Monday night. Jets at Lions. And Sam Darnold in his first game. I think he'll play well, but I don't think they'll win. I think Lions have got it, and Matt Patricia will get his first win as a head coach. Sam Darnold will put up a fight, but it's just there's not enough around him right now to win a game like this. And last but not least, Rams and Raiders. Note to self, never do Chris Berman impression again. Long story short, I thought the Raiders were going to win, but then they traded Khalil Mack, so that kind of changed my opinion. Now I think the Rams are going to win. They got Sue, they got Donald, they got Talib, they got Peters, they got Joyner. They got Goff, they got Gurley, they got Cooks, they got Woods, they got Cup. So, yeah, they're going to win. Well, guys, that's all the time I have. Thank you for listening. I hope you subscribe and click the little bell to make sure you get every notification for every video. And follow me on Twitter at The Slant Show NFL. I'm Chris Cavana, and I'll see you next time on The Slant.